In the name of Allah, to the name of Allah. I first begin with apology, and that's I am late. And since we are talking about time, I think it's appropriate to understand what it means to be late. I am not very organized in terms of what I'm going to say. And perhaps all these conversation which is going to happen in coming 3-4 weeks is basically this mutiny against organization. And to begin with, the organization of time. Who organized our time? What happened that this organization basically appeared? Not just happened, but appeared. And here we have to be very careful with each single word we use. So what it means to happen and what it means to appear. And we will continue doing that with some sort of sense of pain. And I should alarm you in the beginning that it might be painful. Why it might be painful? It might be painful because we are conditioned to live in organization, which means that we are conditioned to think in certain way, which means we are conditioned to perceive things in certain way, which means we are conditioned to perceive and give name to our experience in certain way. My philosophical ambition, if there is any, because to claim a philosophical ambition itself is a paradoxical thing, because I am against philosophy. And what it means to say that I am against philosophy, because philosophy is something which, traditionally speaking, started in Greece with Socrates, not before him. And after Socrates, philosophy became a discipline. And linguistically, philosophy means love for wisdom. So love is inherent in the idea of philosophy. But why to distinguish between love and wisdom? As if love has to approach wisdom. And this wisdom becomes reason. So then there is a tension between love and reason. And then there is a tension between poet and philosopher. And then there is a tension between Plato and all those who were singing in the street of Athens. And then therefore a tension which formed a republic on the basis of expulsion of poet. And that's the beginning of the problem to begin with. So that's just to make you ready that what might come, what you have to endure. You don't only have to endure what I'm saying, you also have to endure my presence, which means the truth. The truth which will reveal and the truth which will conceal. And what is poetic in that sense is this cycle of concealment and unconcealment. And what science promises is an absolute unconcealment. And that is what we are trying to fight. Why we are trying to fight? Might be the good. I haven't started yet. I haven't come to the topic yet. I haven't spoken about anything which I am supposed to speak. It is just a sort of warming up. I'm just kicking the ball. To get the sense that, is it a good ball? I mean, will I win the match with this ball? So, let's try to understand that this lecture in particular is not, and for that matter, all these lectures which will come, which will follow. And this is also very interesting, what comes, what follows. Right? Word after word after word. Does wisdom chase something? If wisdom is sort of embedded in words, is wisdom itself chasing something? It's coming, it hasn't come, it will come, it is already coming. This is a play, which means this mind and presence is always ready to endure a bigger presence. And perhaps we will go to religion to understand that in a much more deeper sense, that what happened to Musa at Tur, what he could endure and what he could not endure. So, let's say the beginning has not happened. Let's say I am going to begin. Which means that there is a new word added to the dictionary this year, in the Oxford Dictionary, which is called post-truth. Right? And after the Trump's victory and after Brexit, we are constantly talking about this post-truth. What is this post-truth? There is an article in the Statesman, I think it's anyway, about this, and a lot of people are now talking about post-truth. And the post-truth means that, according to Oxford Dictionary, that you don't need any fact to constitute your truth. In fact, you don't need any questioning in order to have a truth, which means that you can pick whatever you want and constitute your truth. Which means, let's try to understand it with a very simple example. And the simple example is, I don't know his name, but this guy who runs the radio show, John O'Reilly? Riley?
Which radio show are you talking about?
LBC, right? LBC, there is a... Yeah, so you might have seen that show, how you will see something on radio, but it was on YouTube. So I saw the radio show, Paradoxic. That's the technology. And perhaps this paradox inherent in the technology, that we listen what we see and we see what we listen, which is very inherent in this idea of technology. And perhaps if Dajjal has to come, it has already come, which means deception. That is very inherent in the idea of technology. But technology is different, as Heidegger would say, and as we will try to engage with Heidegger, that technology is different from the essence of technology. And essence and technology is always in contestation with each other. So let's go back to the example. And the example is that some guy called, he was a plumber, and he called and he said that I voted for Brexit. And the radio jockey, the host, the commentator, said, why you voted for Brexit? And he said, I voted for Brexit because there are tyrannical laws of European Union which we have inherited being part of the European Union and which is not good for Britain. So he asked, what are these laws? He said, I don't know. Then why you voted for Brexit? He said, because some Eastern European are taking my job. So he asked, did he take your job? He said, no. Okay, so then why you voted for Brexit? And then he said, when I go to the public square, I see strange faces and it scares me. And therefore I voted for Brexit. So this constitution of truth is not informed by anything external. It is informed by external, but not external. What I mean? What I mean to say is that it is not informed by the external, which means it is not informed by some data, by some information, by some knowledge, by some empirical evidence. It is informed by his perceivement of someone, of something, how he perceives black, how he perceives white, how he perceives beard, how he perceives Polish language, or how he perceives headscarf. Now this perceiving, which may not be informed, which may not be critical, but it is there, is constituting public. What it means in much more deeper sense is perhaps more interesting to look. And I will keep repeating that I haven't started yet, just to assert that starting is not easy. Right? You may have to dance at the same point where you are standing for ages in order to begin, in order to start. So starting is difficult. And if you know this story, which is reported in many book of ahadith, is a man who killed 99 people, 99 person, and then he wanted to repent, and he went to a Sufi master, if you want to say so, although I don't think Rahib can be translated as Sufi master. Rahib, I don't know. I mean, Rahib can be translated someone who has abandoned the world. And he went to that man and said that I have killed 99 persons. And is there a way, hallahu min tawbah, is there a way for me to repent? And he says, la, no. So he killed him. Right? And in doing that, he made 100. Right? He made a century. If someone is familiar with cricket, 100 means a lot. He made century, and then he said again, is there a way to repent? Hallahu min tawbah. And someone told him, go to the alim, not to the rahib. So here is a very interesting distinction between alim and rahib. And you go to the alim, and perhaps this is what Quran is saying, that hal yastawi alladhina ya'lamuna walladhina la ya'lamun. So go to the alim. And the alim, he went there and he said, is there a way? And he said, yes, there is a way. How this way works? And this way is simple. Live where you are and go to the place of good people, good company, which is far away. And once you reach there, your repentance will be accepted. And that man travels and he dies in the middle ground. And two angels came, one from the hell and one from the heaven, and said that this man was basically a murderer and he should go to hell. And the other said, but he was going to the right place, and hell said it should be pardoned. And they were fighting. One narrative is that God sent third angel, hatta suratun admi, in the face of a man. Here is an interesting contrast. Why in the shape of man? Angel could talk to angel. Why man? Right? If you just be careful with the wording, wisdom might reveal itself. Not the total wisdom, but wisdom might arrive in sequences. And that man who came, who was not a man but an angel, and he said, let's measure. If he is close to the good people, he should be in the heaven. And if he is still close or closer to the wrong people or the bad company, he should go to hell. Now, this is another interesting twist if you are interested in language and philosophy. The interesting twist, it comes from Muwatta Imam Malik, if I'm not wrong, if my memory is not betraying me, because memory betrays, and memory betrays because we are dependent on technology, because we have outsourced the memory to technology. But in Muwatta Imam Malik, and we will come to this question of technology because we have not started yet, and the narrative is that God sort of shortened the length, squeezed the land, and made it shorter. And when they measured, they found that this man was closer to the right people. And hence he is pardoned, hence he is in the heaven. What it means to be in the heaven, I'm not going there. I definitely have my own idea on that. But what I mean to say is that we have not, to begin is not easy. We say we are the big, and that's the problem with time, because time gives you a sense of running, and therefore you should constantly run, because who has arranged the time? And that's the key question perhaps we will be trying to address and understand, and technology should also be understood from that very position. So coming back to the question where I started, and I'm sorry, this will be like my talk is like a darwish who is whirling, right? So bear with me, and if you have any confusion, you can interrupt, because I'm not a darwish. So, unlike a darwish who keeps whirling without listening, I am someone who is ready to stop myself while whirling. But I don't want to be swayed away or destroyed by my whirlwind. So, you are free to interrupt where you think that I am missing the link, or I am sort of whirling very fast, or maybe I am doing something which is blinding you all by the dust I am creating through this process. So, okay, do we have time? I'm sorry.
Do we have time?
The time which you are controlling, that time, how much I have. So, Shall we go for? Shall I go and also the let's make it not rule, because rule is a very bad word. Let's make it okay. Let's make it like this: that if you think that I am getting boring, or it's getting not going anywhere, we can just finish it. I mean, finish it means murder the subject. So let's try to understand from this Brexit, from this post-truth, from this Trump, that what is happening. And we all know that social media has a role to play in this. Every commentator, and I work in a department, I mean, I'm a misfit in a department, but I work in a department which is called Media and Communication, and out of everyone, except me, perhaps, is working on social media, digital media, social media and revolution, truth and social media, these topics. And most of the people will agree that their social media has something to do, communication has something to do, technology has something to do. At the same time, people are arguing that internet has opened the door or ocean of information, fact and information is all there. If it's all there, here is perhaps the question for all of us to think. And also, let me again repeat, and I'm sorry for all these things, because it will, by second lecture, I will be much more comfortable with all of you, is that I am not a teacher. I'm also someone who is struggling with the question. And for me, the most important thing is the question. Are we asking the question? As Heidegger would, we will come to him, but Heidegger would say, are we asking the question? And perhaps most important thing is the question. And Derrida has a very interesting talk on what comes before the question. So I am preparing something for myself and for you and for, let's limit here. That how to question. The question here is that what it means that we are open to the source of information, ocean of information. At the same time, we are entering into a post-truth world, which means we don't need information, which means we don't need fact, which means we are constituting our truth by however we want to perceive things. And why, despite of everything, that Europe is becoming more racist, or it was always racist and now it is expressing itself much more clearly, I don't know. My theoretical work, which I call myself bare moment, that's another debate, but bare moment in my brief theory, which I am actually taking from an Italian philosopher, Giorgio Agamben, and I'm subverting him, I am contesting him. He calls bare life, I call bare moment. There is a moment which comes because of certain historical political process which makes certain communication possible. So even if I abuse you, even if Trump says that no Muslim is permitted, although we know that it is unconstitutional, or we might know that this is horrendous, or no American president has ever said that, but he said it. And people identified with it, and people voted for it. What it means is that there is a moment, not time, moment, a moment which constitutes the space, right? Again, there is a philosophical problem. That what is a moment which constitutes the space in which something which, if said, remains uncontested. So people identify with it immediately. So if he's saying that there should be a wall, there should be this, there should be that, and whatever. Some people are challenging, but some people are definitely identifying with it. People are identifying with Boris Johnson or Le Pen, and therefore the problem is not with Trump. The problem is not with Theresa May. The problem is not with Boris Johnson. The problem is not with Le Pen. Problem is somewhere else. And in order to not question, because we can't question, because we don't know how to question. It's not that we are not capable of questioning. The problem is we don't know how to question. We have been organized in a way that we no longer know how to go to question, right? How to go to the question. And perhaps this is why we are not questioning that it's not the problem of Trump. It's not the problem of Brexit or person or government or governance or state. It's something much more problematic than that. What it is happening? Let's move an inch from here. What I mean is that just look from outside, and perhaps this is another problematic question, can we look from outside? But I will try to come to all these questions. What is happening to people that despite all these technological advancement, we are witnessing more violence? Some people say that there is less, and violence is the topic which I'm struggling with and which we will talk about. But are we becoming violent? Not only in terms of violence which we say happen between two people, to a state, physical violence, but violence which is to be in a comfortable place and not to accept, even on Facebook, if somebody writes a comment which is not somehow going in line with your idea or my idea, we might throw him out or throw her out. But it is much more than that. And much more than that is that we are not thinking. And here is my topic. Now we come to topic, that what it means to think and what is blocking the thinking. What is it that is blocking the thinking? And why we are not thinking. And not as thinking that why Brexit happened or why Theresa May happened. And this is problem number one, that if we are thinking in the given paradigm. If we are thinking, we are already thinking in terms of social and political. If we are thinking outside. We are already reflecting outside, which takes us back to a historical problem. And the historical problem begins with history. And what it means that historical problem begins with history. History as a modern thing is modern, and that's the beginning of history. And that may be a very blasphemous thing to say, that there was already a history. But no, unfortunately no. In a very European term, where we are right now, I don't belong to Europe, I don't belong to West, but unfortunately there is no East. And that's the whole tension we are struggling with, that even if you want to get out of West, is there something called East left? And these are the questions we are struggling. I mean, you know that there is a whole theoretical movement called decoloniality, which wants to get out of this colonial tension, which has defined our time, because it's not colonization of geographical areas. It was the colonization of time, the way our time was recorded, the way our time was preserved, and the way our time was transmuted and communicated. So, again, like this circle, and obviously I'm not a Marxist, so I don't believe in linear and dialectic, so I will go circular, always sort of anyway. So, what happened in West is this. Cogito ergo sum. This is what happened to him. I think, therefore I am. And that's the beginning of everything. That thinking is bigger than my being, my existence. And thinking can define everything. So my thinking is the center of my world, which means this subject and object can be defined by my thinking. What will become I, so I become subject, and subject has the consciousness. And if subject has the consciousness, subject has the truth. So subject becomes center of truth. So the world becomes anthropocentric. So we become humanist. Wow, lovely, thank you very much. But it's extremely problematic that what they are doing, what Descartes did, what Spinoza did, what Bacon did, and in a way making this subject, and I don't want to go there much because perhaps we need another lecture, and perhaps we need lectures, and perhaps we need punishment more than lectures to understand this history, and perhaps we are already punished for that history. The problem, what happened is that this subject and object is defined. So there is an objective truth. Journalists can be objective. This distinction between object and subject, how it happened, why it happened, and then this means that there is a scientific thinking. We should think rationally. We think logically, because reason is what has constituted. I do not exist. I think, therefore I exist. And what if I don't think? Which means here thinking is not Heideggerian thinking. This is a bloody scientific thinking, which is consciousness of the subject, that I can rule over the object, and hence I am thinking. So if I am thinking, right, I'm thinking. So it means my subject is constituted by my consciousness, which means I can define these black people in Australia or Africa as an object to be governed. And in order to form their subjectivity, my subject has risen to the consciousness. I hope you're getting. And even if you don't get, it's unimportant. The important is perhaps this movement at your axis. The beginning will happen. So, what I mean is that this scientific thinking, scientific rationality, and then even human sciences become scientific. And we logically, rationally started to constitute subject and object. This is an object, I am the subject, you are subject of my subject, and I am constituting subject, and subject has the consciousness, therefore subject has the truth, and since he has the truth, he is the center of the world. Science can do anything. Science can reveal anything, which means knowledge is the center of the subject, which means epistemology is the center of the philosophy, which means philosophy itself is not needed. What we need is science, which means we need epistemology, which means we need knowledge, which means we don't need anything but knowledge. And even if you have love, I should empirically judge how much love do you have. So there should be a love meter. If there is no love meter, then devise 30 questions. In order to, through question, I can find that how much love you have for something, for animal, for cat, for me, for dog. Psychoanalysis and whole this idea of quantifying human emotion, human experience, and then sort of making it scientific in order to make it coherent with the time which we have invented. And this time is not time of the being, of my presence, of my Dasein. I'm not going there yet, but this time which is constituted in the name of clock. And clock is the tyranny over the being. Clock is an utmost absurd thing. And Pessoa has a beautiful thing to say on this. And Pessoa says that who am I, in a way, is my presence. And he's saying that I am saying. I am saying because I am trying to explain Pessoa. So I'm not saying, but I'm saying. That my presence, my existence, as absurd as the clock tower. Right? What it means? What is this absurdity of the presence which is sort of seen in that clock tower? Why this clock tower is absurd? Why is it absurd? Is it absurd because it's a clock tower? Or is it absurd because it is somewhere trying to keep a time where it shouldn't? Being static, what is happening at the clock tower? Because there is people going, coming, eating, chanting, running, whatever they are. So there is a movement. In that movement, there is something static trying to govern them, and that is the bloody clock tower. I am not going there yet because we will go there, and we will discuss some text as well. I mean, if time permits. So what happened? I have not started yet. So what happened? So that happened that scientific world was created. And that scientific world gave way to technological world, to technological advancement. And technological advancement was thought to be the marvelous achievement of human being, from nuclear bomb to aeroplane to the light. Let's come to light. To begin with, let's focus on light. What is light? What is this light? And what is night? Light is something, let's try to understand it philosophically. What is light? Light does three things. First of all, it gives me sense of distance. I am here, you are here. Glass is here, Umar is there, you are there, you are there. Clear. Second thing, sense of direction, how I will exit. In case of fire, T we go there. But how we go there? There is a light taking me there. There is in the aeroplane, they say there is a fluorescent light to guide you. Okay, but nobody actually is saved by that fluorescent light ever. I have not. Today a plane crashed in Pakistan. Everyone died, but fluorescent light did not save anyone. Maybe it has saved in the history, and that history is not saved. Absurdity of time. So, first function of light is creating a distance between me and you. Right? Then it is giving me a sense of direction, how to exit, how to go, how not to go. And third, it is constituting subject and object by being a light. Which means this is an object might be. You can become my object. I am the subject. So this distinction between subject and object is constantly happening because of light. But here is the catch. Not catch 22, but just catch. And the catch is, by doing all this, giving me the sense of distance, telling me the direction, constituting the subject-object distinction, light is hiding something. So light never reveals itself. It just illuminates the space. What I mean to say here? What I mean to say here is a complicated thing. But let me try to make it easier. Why that in all higher religion, and let's assume that we all know Islam a bit, and perhaps Christianity as well, and perhaps Hinduism as well. I mean, let's assume that we know Islam, for example. You know that in Quran and in Ahadith, what is glorified is the ibadat, worshipping of night. Why? Why night is glorified in higher religion? Why this absence of light is celebrated? Why it is said that to Muhammad that get up at night? And why for most of the people, don't consider me a religious guru or something. Let's the disclaimer. I am a scholar and a scholar with a collar. Someone who is just interested, intrigued, fascinated, and also somehow disturbed by the absurdity of this clock, the tyranny of the clock, which is controlled by something, by someone, which I have not revealed to you yet. So why this is glorified, this night? And who has taken our night since the advent of modernity? There is ever presence of light. Are we really sleeping? Are we really dreaming? Can we sleep any longer? I mean, this thing, which we call a smartphone, it can illuminate the entire room, right? So even by mistake at 2 o'clock in the middle of night, if I touch it, it takes my night away. Why night is important? What it does, which light does not. And why God says about himself in Quran, and again considering that we all know Islam at this juncture, in this small, why God himself called Nurun ala Nur, not Nur? What is it that he is trying to do? It does not solve the problem. You framed God, but it does not solve the problem. I am not answering that as well. I am saving it. And perhaps we should think about it. And I may answer, but at the end. And I don't know when the end will come. But at the same time, let's imagine that we are playing those games in which, I don't know what it is called technically, where there are dots and children are asked to connect the dot, and when the dot is connected, we see a dog or an angel or a chair or maybe a clock. So let's connect all these dots. Everything I'm saying is a dot. A dot which is in a way static, but if we connect, we might see something. One of the technological interest in America especially, and maybe it's in the entire West, if there is something called West, which is Europe, and is to free human being from sleep. I don't know whether you know this. Let me read something, since I have something to read for you. Initiated by the Advanced Research Division of the Pentagon, scientists in various labs are conducting experimental trials of sleeplessness techniques, including neurochemicals, gene therapy, and transcranial magnetic stimulation. The near-term goal is the development of methods to allow a combatant to go for a minimum of 7 days without sleep, and in the longer term, perhaps at least double that time frame. While preserving high levels of mental and physical performance, existing means of producing sleeplessness have always been accompanied by deleterious cognitive and psychic deficit. This was the case with the widespread use of amphetamines in most 20th century wars, and more recently with drugs like Provigil. The scientific quest here is not to find ways of stimulating wakefulness, but rather to reduce the body's need for sleep. Let's understand, and there is a beautiful book which has informed me a lot, which is called 24/7, Late Capitalism and the End of Sleep. But the question of sleep is in the end question of my own presence, in the end the question of time. Because what is happening in the name of 24/7? Why we need 24/7 economy? Why we need everything 24/7? What is happening? Why we don't need night? 24/7 means constant production of light, constant production of matter, constant production of services. He writes, Jonathan Crary writes, and we will try to unpack him. Behind the vacuity of the catchphrase 24/7 is a static 24/7 redundancy that disavows its relation to the rhythmic and periodic textures of human life. It connotes on arbitrary, uninflected schema of a week extracted from any unfolding of variegated or cumulative experience. To say 24, 36, 365, for example, is simply not the same, for this introduces an unwieldy suggestion of an extended temporality in which something might actually change, in which unforeseen event might happen. 24/7 is a time of indifference, against which the fragility of human life is increasingly inadequate and within which sleep has no necessity or inevitability. In relation to labor, it renders plausible, even normal, the idea of working without pause, without limits. He is connecting it with the late capitalism, that capitalism does not want you to sleep. Therefore, it has given mobile, it has made it smart so that you become dumb, and it has created a system in which you are constantly on toes. And people, and then at the same time, but I'm not coming here straight forward, and at the same time, making everyone police of the other. So make a system in which I should know when he has checked something, when he was there, when he was present technologically. At the same time, I'm constantly keeping a tab. So everyone becomes police. But this policing is 24/7. So there are two aspects to it. One aspect is that capitalism wants services and production and human to become robot, or robot to replace human. That should be 24/7. Which means, second thing, the sense of time should disappear from my being, from my wujud. Which means what? Which means that I should not be able to experience, I should not be able to memorize, I should not be able to perceive. What I should do is constantly produce, either tweet or Facebook or some sort of thing which could directly be used. But we know that all Facebook posts we do, all Twitter tweet we do is basically a production which helps Zuckerberg or the other. So it's not going in vain. It's not your political commentary which is important. It is the profit made 24/7 by our tweet, by our being there. Which means what? Which is not simply problem of the capital. It is something which is much more dangerous. What is much more dangerous? Is that human being slowly, with the presence of technology, with the whale of technology, with the instrument of technology, is becoming something which could not experience, which could not sense. You will say that this is a huge claim, and I know it's a huge claim. But if it is not happened, it is happening. We are already there. We don't experience everything. Experience is difficult. And here is the question of night. And the question of night becomes very, very important. Not only that we cannot experience, because you know that to experience, you have to be attentive. You have to pay yourself completely to something, devote yourself. And perhaps this is why ibadat or worshipping is not possible. Because we are constantly not experiencing. We are not constantly experiencing because we cannot be attentive for something or towards something for a long time. I don't know how many of you know Simone Weil, the brilliant woman philosopher. I just remember one sentence of her, and perhaps that's very revealing a sentence. Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. Let me repeat it. Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. Are we attentive? Are we attentive enough to perceive something? Not what is there, not what is material, not what is physical, but also metaphysical, what is beyond. It reminds me of very similar thing which Imam Ghazali has said about ikhlas. And I don't know how it can be translated in English, but very close translation will be a very sincere attention towards someone, in this case God. Ghazali argues, that a one moment of ikhlas is enough for man's total emancipation. But that one moment of ikhlas, which will take you from this experience to that experience, you may have to harness that, you may have to cultivate it. And to cultivate that, you may have to be more attentive, which means we have to experience the night as night, being as being, God as God, things as things. Not as everything as mere data, information, science, logic, and material production. This is quite a problematic thing when we say 24/7. And I want to go there further, but I am just sort of dropping it because it will go very long. And I want to return back to the question of time before we actually understand what technology is and what Heidegger has to say about it. And just in preparation, as I have already said, that the question, what might challenge this scientific, logical, empirical thinking, which is basically not thinking, which is outside the being. But let's try to again focus on this question of time, and then we will again return back to the question of technology. There was a brilliant, and we will understand it from a poetic position, because we cannot understand it from scientific position. And if we try to understand from scientific position, we are already defeated. I don't know how to pronounce. Borges. I don't think it should be pronounced like that, but anyway, let's assume we are ignorant about Spanish. He writes, and there is a beautiful piece of work which which you all should read, A New Refutation of Time. I have selected something for you. Just a paragraph. Time is the thing I am made of. Time is a river that sweeps me along, but I am the river. It is a tiger that tears me apart, but I am the tiger. It is a fire that consumes me, but I am the fire. The world, unfortunately, is real. I, unfortunately, am Borges. What do you understand? Or shall I repeat it? Let me repeat it. Repetition is always the beginning of thinking. Time is the thing I am made of. Time is a river that sweeps me along, but I am the river. It is a tiger that tears me apart, but I am the tiger. It is a fire that consumes me, but I am the fire. The world, unfortunately, is real. I, unfortunately, am Borges. And just to remind you that thinking is not possible without repetition. Thinking, and I haven't addressed the question of thinking, which is my key subject, which I am unfortunately, I haven't even touched. But when I will touch by repeating that thinking begins with certain kind of repetition. And let's try 3 times. Since we are in a Rumi's cave and 3 times is a very sacred thing. Time is the thing I am made of. Time is a river that sweeps me along, but I am the river. It is a tiger that tears me apart, but I am the tiger. It is a fire that consumes me, but I am the fire. The world, unfortunately, is real. I, unfortunately, am Borges. What is happening here? What he is trying to say about time? It's definitely not clock. It's not happy birthday, right? Ting, 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 clock told you, you were born on this day, that time, let's celebrate. And ting, 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 clock again told you, you were born on this day and you are happy. Then again the clock told you that you were born and you are happy that you were born. Thank you very much and happy birthday. What is happening here? What is happy birthday? But I don't want to go there because happy birthday is much more dangerous thing than perhaps. It is another technology. It's a clock which keeps you telling where you are. While you are not there, but it is telling you that you are there at 26, at 27. But that 26, 27 does not exist. So, what is it that Bach's trying to attain? Let's wait here. This was west. Let's go to east. Something similar. This is Iqbal. I don't know how many of you know. And that's Persian. And that's where music comes. And I will try to explain it together. Khurshid badamanam, anjum ba garibanam, dar man nagri hecham, dar khud nagri janam, dar shahr biyabanam, dar kakh shabistanam, man dardam darmanam, man aish farawanam, man tayg jahan suzam, man chashmay haywanam. चंगेज़ यो तैमूरी मुश्तेज़ गुबारे मन हंगाम अफरंगी यक जस्त शरारे मन इंसान जहाने ऊ अज नक्श निगारे मन खूने जिगरे मर्दां सामान बहारे मन मन आतिश सोजानम मन रोदे रिदवानम आसूद व सय्यारम ई तुर्फ तमाशा बी दरबाद इमरोजम कैफियत फरदा बी पिन्हा ब ज़मीरे मन सद आलम राना बी सद कौकब गलता हैं सद गुंबद खिजरा बी तकदीर फसूने मन तदबीर फसूने तू आशिक लैलाए मन दश्त जुनूने चूं रूह रवां पाकम असचंद चगूने तू राज दरूने मन राज दरूने अस जान तू पैदायम दर जान तू पिन्हानम मन रह रहो तू मंजिल मन मजरो तू हासिल तू सास सदा हंगे तू गर्मी ई महफिल आवार आबो गिल दरियाब मकामे दिल गंजीद बजामी बी ई कुल्ज़ुम बेसाहिल अजमाउच बुलंदे तू सर बरज़दा तूफाना. I'm not sure how many of you know Persian and how many of you know Urdu. But even for a Urdu speaker, it might be very difficult. Abbas might be the only person sort of grappling with it in a right way, maybe. But even if you knew it, is it easy to grapple? Perhaps not. I will try to just focus on 2-3 points here, on 2-3 standards. And he is saying, the poem is called Nawaiwa. So the time is speaking for itself. So it's a poem by time, which is appearing in Iqbal. What it means, it's another philosophical problem, that how can time speak from Iqbal? And what is this relation between being and time? The time can speak through being. That's an important point. Let's hold it. But time is saying that sun is in my sleeve and stars are in my clutch, control. And even if you want to see me, you cannot see me. But once you dive deep inside you, you might see me. Because I have constituted the cities, I have constituted the desert, and I have constituted sacred spaces, and I have constituted places like Parliament. And I am sadness, I am happiness, and I am which brings everything. This is less problematic. Let's move to more problematic. Taqdeer fasune man, tadbir fasune tu. Very tricky. Taqdeer fasune man. Taqdeer is fate. Fate is my magic. Tadbir fasune tu. Tadbir is strategy. Let's say strategy. Strategy is your counter magic. So there is fate and there is a strategy. Time is, and both is not true, because magic is not true. So let's do poetic thinking, which is my concern. And what I have done so far is already a poetic thinking. So taqdeer fasune man, tadbir fasune tu ashiq laylae man dasht junune tu. You are the lover ashiq of Layla. You know this story of Layla and Majnun. If you don't know, and why you shouldn't know. And this is why interesting, because another question of love is important. And unfortunately, it's not in my scope of things, but can we experience love is a very serious question. Are we replacing sensation to love? And what we are calling love is basically sensation. And therefore, pornography, even in the time of recession, succeeds. And even news in the time of horror succeeds, because it appeals to sensation. And we can no longer experience things, and therefore we are hungry for sensation. But let's save it maybe for the discussion. So he's saying that time is saying, and time is he. That's my subjectivity, which is so shame. I'm ashamed of this. It's time, whatever he or she is. Time is saying, time, the neutral time, without he or she. That I am the magic, fate is my magic, and strategy is your counter magic. To ashiq laylae man dasht junoon tu. So you are the lover of Layla, and I am that forest of madness. Chu ruh rawan pakam, astando chagune tu, let's leave it. Let's leave this. But let's focus here. And let's focus on another couplet. Man rahrao tu manzil, man mazrao tu hasil, tu saas sada hange, tu garmi e mahfil. Time is saying, and I think this is remarkable. Time is saying, man rahrao tu manzil. I am the traveler. Tu manzil, and you are the destiny. What it is? Tu saas sada hange, tu garmiye e mahfil. I think it is what Bogd is trying to say, that time is a river that sweeps me along, but I am the river. And what it means, that time is saying that I am the way, I am the path, and you are the destiny. But who is this you? Who is the destiny? What is tu? What is you? What is you? And that's a very difficult question. And perhaps this is very interesting overlap between being and time. Wujud and time. Waqt. And this is Nawai Waqt, call from the time. If time is the path and being is the destiny, then what is being? Being is something which is not revealing itself at all. And then time becomes the path in order to conceive that concealment, to perceive that concealment. But concealment is not possible. And whatever conceals, unconcealment is not possible. And whatever tries to unconceal is basically tries to conceal. Which means science and technology, according to Heideggerian Techne, is basically born to unconceal. Therefore, it is grounded on epistemology, because it is trying to reveal. It is telling you that see there is sun and there is something, and constantly trying to reveal. But in trying to constantly reveal, it is not actually revealing. And that's the whole problem. Because we are stuck in that light, in that revelation. But who is carrying that revelation that is getting revealed? And that's the philosophical question, which I wanted to sort of deal with it in much more detail, but I don't think I have time. And perhaps we are going to do it again and again, because it's not an easy thing. And it is not an easy thing. That means that it's not easy even for one who is speaking here, which means, which is true because symbolically, because both of us have the same chair, which means equally uncomfortable. But here is this problem, and this is the problem which we are trying to sort of grapple, that what technology is, what Heidegger calls about technology is gestell, which is enframing. So technology enframes, in a way it reveals, but at the same time it sort of enframes you in that revelation. And what is not revealed is no longer what we perceive. And perhaps that's the whole question that we are becoming post-truth public. But here, this is not the end, because what will help us to perceive is the language. And therefore Heidegger says that language is where man dwells. So man's home is language. Do we have a language? The language is eroding from the being. We no longer have a language, not even symbolically, metaphorically. We are relying on emoticons, perhaps. We are relying on something which is not language at all, something which does not represent. And what is language? And that's a very, very crucial thing, which I am going to deal in much more detail through serious poetry, especially of Rumi in the next class, if we want to call it class, but in the next session. But just note this very, very critical and crucial point, is that language, which we think is to name something. If there is a switch, let's name it. It's a bag, let's name it. This is a man, give him a man's name, not a woman's name. It kind of creates problem. But some name are gender neutral, right? God's name. But language is not for naming. That's the violence. And that's what perhaps Derrida, another philosopher, says, that naming is the originary violence. If naming is the originary violence, it is the originary violence on whom? On what? In my opinion, in my reading of Derrida and through Heidegger, it is the violence on the language itself. Which means language is not there to name. For Heidegger, language is something which summons, something which helps to call. By saying a word, we call that word, and the essence of the word, and the spirit of the word. And by calling, and here, thinking is embedded in language, because in that, only dwelling is possible if language is used for summoning. So memory is not what you remember, but what you call. And what you call is what is close to your heart. And what is close to your heart? نَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. God is close to your heart. Hence, zikr becomes very central to any religion. Remembrance becomes central to any religion. Because by remembering, you are not remembering. You are not into cyclical process of reminding, but you are summoning God again and again. Why you are summoning God is what we will deal in the next. Let's end here again by another problem of time, which is again a poetry by one of my favorites, German poet, Rilke, Rainer Maria Rilke. I don't know if someone is German here, so she can help me to pronounce, but Rilke is how I say, with my apologies to German sensibilities. He says, and perhaps it might be more beautiful in German, but again my apology for my... and by the way, why shall I apologize? But I should, because I should be knowing this language, because I am engaging with this. Does time, and this is a poem, but not like Iqbal, where the music, and that's the tension between East and West, perhaps. But let's... I assume that because I have read a little bit of German with Rilke, and I think it's very poetic. Does time, as it passes, really destroy? That's the first line. And perhaps this is why thinking is a poetic act. And you will see in this point. And you have already seen. If you have not seen, it means the thinking has not begun, which means the beginning is difficult. Does time, as it passes, really destroy? It may rip the fortress from its rock. But can this heart that belongs to God be torn from him by circumstances? And let me repeat. And there are two questions already there. And there are four stanzas, which means there are many questions. And all relating to time. Does time, as it passes, really destroy? It may rip the fortress from its rock. But can this heart that belongs to God be torn from him by circumstances? Are we as fearfully fragile as fate would have us believe? Can we ever be severed from childhood's deep promise? Ah, the knowledge of impermanence that haunts our days is their very fragrance. Every line needs to be unpacked in a very sincere passion. We, in our striving, think we should last forever. But could we be used by the divine if we were not ephemeral? Let me repeat it. We, in our striving, think we should last forever. But could we be used by the divine if we were not ephemeral? Here, some of the fundamental question of thinking is picked by Rilke. To begin with, what passes really destroys? Does time just evaporate? Or it congregates somewhere? And by passing of time, by the end of me, do we really belong to God, or we time sort of destroy everything? And that's the Heideggerian problem of primordial being, of the Dasein. Becoming man is not becoming being. There are two different things. What is man and what is being? What is Dasein and what is Sein? What is primordial really? And that's what I wanted to talk about, but I think I have to suspend this idea for now, or defer it, or as we say, meaning is in infinite deference, so it is deferred. Now, what is this childhood deep promise which is severed, which is destroyed by time or by fate? But what fate is concealing? What is in the fate which is so frightening for people? Are we as fearfully fragile as fate would have us believe? Can we ever be severed from childhood? And this is the question, are we really? And what is the childhood's deep promise? What is the deep promise of the childhood? That tomorrow might be better. Tomorrow you will be stronger. Tomorrow there is a world of fairy. And the life is long, which means you will live forever. Which means time will not tick against you. Which means time is inside you. Which means you are already there. Ah, the knowledge of impermanence that haunts our days is their very fragrance. We in our striving think we should last forever. But could we be used by the divine if we were not ephemeral? So divine is using us because we are ephemeral, because we are temporal, because we are not here for long. Since we are not here for long, I should be used. And if I am there forever, I am not to be used. Why? What it means? What is it trying to say? What is the relation between man and God here, or woman and God, or creator and creature? And this ephemerality, this temporality, this sense of time being passing or time being destroyed, is it a man's consciousness? Man means man, woman, human consciousness. Or is it the problem of a fish? Heidegger would suggest that this problem of Dasein, of this ephemerality, of this time, is a purely human problem. And I would like to stop it here, which means the beginning has happened and a lot of things will carry itself if I sustain one more week of December. So let's call it a pause and begin question or discussion or addition or criticism or whatever comforts your sensibility. Thank you very much.